Shalom. This is our little Dvar Torah on the Sedrat. This week's Sedrat is Vayakehl, so I hope you enjoy. Okay, you should have your sheets open in front of you. This is Sedrat sheets SE 205, Sedrat 205 on Vayakehl. The pasuk says like follows: "Kechu meitchem truma laHashem kol nediv libo yiviyah es trumas Hashem zahav kesef v'nechoshes." Take from yourselves a donation for God, right? The whole idea of take for yourselves is a whole question of itself. What does it mean take for yourselves? Why doesn't it just say give? But that's for a different Dvar Torah, a different time. It says take for yourselves a donation for God. Every generous-hearted person, right? It's the idea of kol nediv libo is every generous-hearted person, shall bring the donation for God's offering, gold, kesef, and copper. We're going to concentrate on what this means of kol nediv libo, every generous-hearted person. What does that phrase mean, a generous-hearted person? That what, if you weren't generous, then you shouldn't give? What does that mean? In order to understand this, we have to look at a halacha in the Rambam. And this halacha in the Rambam seems to have absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with our pasuk, but yet it actually has a tremendous amount to do with it, and the Rambam even quotes our pasuk in this halacha. So we're going to look at this halacha. And the halacha says as follows. And again, I just want to make one thing clear. We're not looking at this halacha in the Rambam to understand the halacha. That's very important for its own time, but that's not what the point here. But the point that we're doing here is we're trying to see get a definition of our pasuk, especially our phrase kol nediv libo, from the words in this this halacha. As this halacha is going to quote that pasuk, from that pasuk we'll be able to understand something about, from that halacha we'll be able to understand something from our pasuk. So that's what we're really looking for. How does the Rambam use the pasuk? How does the Rambam use our phrase from the pasuk? And then how he uses it, we'll be able to extrapolate an understanding of our pasuk. So the Rambam says as follows: a person who vows and offers to give something, usually we're talking about to the Beis HaMikdash, right? So he offers to give or vows to give something, so he's not obligated to give it until his heart and his mouth are equal, meaning until what he says and what he intended are the same. Ketzad, so the Rambam says that might be a little confusing to understand, so let me explain through it with a case. If a person said that I'm going to give an ola korban is a korban that everything was burnt, and instead of saying, that's what he had in mind, I'm going to give to the Beis HaMikdash an ola offering, a korban that the whole thing is going to be burnt up, it's a special type of korban. And instead he says, right, that's what he's thinking, ola, and instead he says shlamim. Right, now he says shlamim, so in that case he said shlamim. Shlamim is a different type of korban which is actually split up three ways. It's split up, and you're going to see this idea, maybe, no, sorry, you won't see it, someone else will. But in any case, I talked about this idea in a different setting in a Dvar Torah that on Vayakehl that'll go out soon. But the idea is that instead you say shlamim, which is a korban that's given between the Kohen gets a piece, the owner that gave the korban gets a piece, and a piece is burnt up onto the mizbeach, onto the altar. So in any case, but the point for us is that he said the wrong thing. Oh, sheneschavin lo mahari ze ola v'amar shlamim. Right, or he says this is an ola, and really it was a shlamim. So the lo amar klum, his words mean absolutely nothing, right? Meaning that he hasn't vowed to give anything; he doesn't owe anything. The schavin lindor ba'ola v'amar korban, lindor b'cherem v'amar hekdesh dvar kamim. If though he said something, and really what he said, he misspoke, but he was talking to a larger category. So in other words, he wanted to give an ola, and he said the word korban. Now, since ola is a type of korban, that still works. He's still obligated to give, right? He says sha'ola korban v'cherem hekdesh v'chein chalatzek. So all that's the same. So it's only if he gets it completely wrong and his intention was one thing and he said another, that's where it doesn't count. If they were similar, then it does count. But right? But when it comes to vows and gifts, he doesn't actually have to say anything, right? Ella in gomar belibo v'lo hotzi b'svasav klum chayev. But if he doesn't say anything, meaning all he did was vow, but he didn't actually say anything, then he still is obligated, right? Ketzad gomer belibo shizu ola shiava ola harizeh chayev lahavish nemar kol nediv leiv. Right, and here's the key, right? How does this work? So when I say to myself, well, I just survived a crazy car accident, right? So now what am I going to do? Now I'm going to give an ola offering. Okay, great. That's perfectly fine. But he didn't say it. He just thought it in his mind. All he did was think it in his mind. So in that case, he's obligated now to bring the korban. Now, where does the Rambam get this from? Where does he get that you don't have to say it, And here's our pasuk: Shemar kol nediv leiv yaviyeha, but nedivas leiv yischayev lavi. The Rambam says, listen carefully to the pasuk. It says kol nediv leiv yaviyeha. Whoever is generous-hearted should bring it. Right? What does the pasuk mean? That anyone who's generous-hearted has to bring. Right? So, what's key? What's the Rambam learning from this pasuk? What do we understand? Now, the Rambam is saying is that as long as you're generous-hearted, that's when you obligate yourself to bring. Meaning that once I had the thought to bring it, that's when I have to bring the korban. Right? When I thought to bring it. Because what does that thought say? That thought expresses something that's in my heart. Now, really, it's not in your heart. Your heart's an organ that's beating. But really, it's your thoughts. So as long as I thought it, that says something about my type of character. My character is generous-hearted. If my reaction is to give something, then I have to be generous-hearted. Rashi, if you look at source number 3, Rashi says, Nediv libo, Hashem shel libo nidvo karei nediv leiv. Because his heart moved him to generosity, he is called generous-hearted. Right? That means that, right, since his heart moved him, meaning that his character moved him to be generous, so then he's generous-hearted. Now look at this Psikta Zutra. Psikta Zutra, it's cool. Say that 5 times. Don't actually do that. But that, I mean, you could. But that's, what's Psikta Zutra? That's one of the Midrashim. And what does he say? Kol nedivlibo, hakol holech achar halev. Everything that we do follows our heart. What does that mean? That means that everything really follows our character. When Rabbi Elazar ben Arach in this next Mishnah, in source number 5, was asked, right, when Rabbi Yochanan said to him, say, what's the best trait for a person to have? Right, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach said, a good heart. Right? And Rabbi Yochanan, the Rebbe, remember, by the way, same Rabbi Yochanan we saw in the Mishnah that talked about just to confuse you a little, talked about how a person merely has to agree to pay, and then he gets kefil. Right? Same Rabbi Yochanan, pretty cool, right? We see him in different places. Okay, so here what we have is, right, that when a good heart, meaning that character trait of being generous, is really all a person needs. That's what establishes it. And the Rambam explains, right, it's the source number 6, that when somebody has this good character, what's a good heart? It's good actions. It means that a person follows a balanced life. Right? He's content. He doesn't compromise. He has all the virtues. An evil heart is somebody that lives for his vices, that lives an instinctual lifestyle. That's somebody that has an evil heart. So a good heart is somebody that's generous, that follows a balanced lifestyle, that follows the shields. I have the golden mean, where the person is not living at extremes. That's the idea of a nediv leiv. Right? That's the idea of a good heart. So our question really that we're trying to define is, what's a good heart? What does that mean, a good heart? So a good heart is that Hashem commanded us. Okay, listen very carefully to this. Hashem commanded us not only to give to the base of Mikdash, to give to our Batei Knesset, to give to our schools, but what did Hashem command us to be? To be generous people. Right? Mitzvos could be understood to accomplish certain goals. Why do I put on tefillin? I put on tefillin because Hashem wanted people walking around with tefillin on. Why do I put on tzitzis? For that reason. Why did Hashem tell us to shake lulavim? It's because He wanted a bunch of people. He wanted a bunch of lulavim being shaken. Right? Why did He have us build sukkahs? Because He wanted sukkahs built. Right? That's equal to accomplish a certain goal. Why did Hashem tell us to give tzedakah? To ensure that poor people in schools and shuls would all have enough money to operate. That's how somebody could look at things. Right? That's the idea. I want to make sure poor people have enough food to eat, so we have a mitzvah tzedakah. But there's a second aspect. There's a dual quality to tzedakah. What's the second aspect? The second aspect is that a person has to become generous. Right? That's the idea. That a person has to become generous. Therefore, the Rambam explains from this pasuk, Kol nediv leiv, that every generous person should give, that really, it doesn't make a difference what you say so much as what you have inside. If your character is one of generosity, if your character is one of giving, that's what's important. That's the idea that's so essential to us, that's so important for us, that we have to become generous people. It's not solely enough to meet the needs of poor people, but we have to become generous people. That's the idea of a good heart. And that's why in this week's pasuk, Hashem calls out for all the generous people to come and give. Hashem wanted the Mishkan built by people whose character traits have been generous. Now there's nothing wrong with a miserly person giving tzedakah. If anything, it should be encouraged, because maybe that will have a positive effect on that person. But ideally, What do we want? We want people who give, not only because they feel guilty or because they want their name on the wall or for whatever other reason, but ideally what we want is for a nation of generous people, of nediv lev, of people who want to give, and that's the idea in this week's Sedra. Okay, I hope you enjoy.